There. That's better for me to read by. Okay. Hopefully that works. Alright, so welcome. If you're here with me, thank you for being here. Going live from my phone today in my room because I am still testing the algorithm. I'm trying to do a couple of things to see what's going on, and that means I have to test the rooms, the location, and the devices, and the internet connection itself. So that's going to take a few different combinations. So thank you for your patience as I test that out in the last few videos. So I wanted to get that out there if you're new. And since I'm testing it, that doesn't mean I'm not going to have content. It just means that that's why things will look different in like pretty much every video for a minute. No, not for too long, but for a minute. Now I have a book that I want to read a story to you from. Since it is spooky month, since it is the month of Halloween or All Hallows Eve and All Saints Day, and the feast, that's a 3-day period. We will go over that in a different video because right now I'm testing the device and the location, and so I'm using my phone from my room. And I can't do, for some reason, from the Apple, I can't do screen shares and like do research with you guys, which is always quicker too because, but I will do that from the laptop within the next couple of days. So watch for that. If that interests you, we will cover the origins of All Hallows Eve, but we'll do it different than other channels do it. We're going to do it from a couple of different lenses. It'll be a research with me style. But you can still listen, of course. And so this is the book. The phone's a little tilted and I can't get it any further down, so I apologize for that. Now, the title of this video, I do believe is true. So for probably another 30 seconds to a minute, let me ramble, let people get a chance to get the notification and see how that's working. Oh, I gotta fix the comments because it won't go to all comments unless you click on it. Otherwise, it's just giving you like the top comments. So there's a little tip for other old heads like me out there. So, let me think. Edgar Allan Poe. The reason we're looking at him today, again, is because it's spooky month. But I said books are alchemical. Now, I'm not meaning to be offensive, but just hear me out. The Bible itself is many different books at the same time. It's a farming manual. It's an astronomy book because it tells you about seasons and days and harvesting and planting and sowing and so forth, and about watching the signs in the sky so that you know when to do all of these things and each thing in its season. And where am I going with that? Hold on. Doing each thing in its season. Sorry. Again, I'm doing so many different things at the same time here. It's alchemical too. And again, I don't mean to be offensive, but just to get right to the point. The Bible is an alchemical book in the sense that, in one sense, it's teaching a person how to go from being all about your presentation and appearance to the root of that and making sure that you care about how you present yourself for the right reasons and not for any vanity reasons. Drop in a like because you deserve it. Keep having birthdays. It doesn't get better. Yeah, well, it is what it is, right? Okay, so, moving on. It teaches you how to go from the carnal and focusing on how you look and how you present yourself to the root of that. Are you doing things for the golden rule, which most, and some people will get mad at me for saying this, but most religions are, their foundation is some type of moral standpoint of treating others the way that you want to be treated. And sometimes that's selfish too, because some people only do that because they want something in return. So again, the Bible goes from being carnal to being internal, spiritual, and that's an alchemical process. On another note, it's alchemical because it's teaching you that words have the power to create a reality around people, around yourself. And that can either be a cage or it can be a garden. And whatever that is dependent upon us. And I believe that books and words have power. And when we talk about Philip K. Dick or Dean Koontz, writing about the 2019 event, or The Simpsons, how those episodes seem to be coming into our reality. Are they really? That's another video. But for now, our words do have power and they can be alchemical. And a big part of our words having power is spoken about when you look at the foundations or the tenets of mysticism that includes radical practices like hypnotism. And I do believe that's a radical practice because it takes a person's sovereignty almost completely away from them. Your free will is gone and you're letting someone tinker around in your mind. Beats the alternative, they say. I'll reserve judgment. Okay. Reserve judgment on me. We're supposed to judge and discern, but in a proper way, not about somebody's like soul, So this book is alchemical for a couple of different reasons too. Not only because words have power, but because, and this is the HighStrangeness story that goes along with me receiving this book. I picked out a Poe book on Amazon, and I've talked about my testimony being very strange the last 8 or so years since 2017, since the first eclipse. My life has kind of flipped upside down. Everything. I had a pole flip, but it was in my life and in the people I know and in my own heart in a way. Hello, how are you? So I'm not going to be responding to comments. You guys have a fun time in the chat. Go ahead and talk. I'm going to be reading you a story from this book, but I picked it out on Amazon and I got to stop saying that because it's everywhere. And I kid you not, ordered this and it was here within 24 hours. But it was printed and it came from Vegas, which is funny because of all the stuff going on there now. And in the movie The Stand, that is where the Antichrist kind of makes his home base, is Las Vegas. And we've talked about my theories on America and that area specifically in other videos. So I could show you all that right now, the printing date and everything. I think I did that on the other channel when I was talking about HighStrangeness and things that happened to us. But it came to 2020 from King Solomon Presses, and I got it the next day. They printed it one day, and I received it the next. And I'm all the way up in Ohio from Vegas. I understand we have flights and things like that transport items, but for it to be printed and then delivered the next day is in itself a little strange. No reserve judgment as to whether your life beats the alternative, ma'am. I can judge you. I'm from Iran. Welcome. I hope you're well. So, what I'm going to do is read a story from this, but understand that I got the book under strange circumstances. And more than that, the book itself, when you go through it, and I never knew this about Poe stories, but there are similar characters. It comes to you as an ultimate collection, it says, as a compendium or a compilation with a bunch of different short stories, right? But there are characters threaded throughout the stories that are the same. And that's why I want to read or make that note to you guys. If you want to read more than what I read here today, pay attention to that. Because again, I've discovered that books themselves are alchemical. Now, somebody wanted me to read this, and somebody wanted me to read this in a hurry, is the message that I got when I started There goes the audience. Now, is it the room or is it me? There's the hard question. Okay, so Edgar Allan Poe, the story that we're gonna read, or I'm gonna read, is called Mesmeric Revelation. Mesmeric. Anyways, it's about hypnotism. The word that they used to use for hypnotize or hypnotism was mesmerize or mesmerism. So that's why. So the language can be a little dated. I might explain things as we go if, it seems like they need explaining. So the reason I'm reading this story, first of all, in the times we're in, because words do have power and so does a digital connection, and that is why I'm testing my devices, because if you're targeted spiritually or materially by people, that involves electronics and electronic devices, okay? Because Prince of the airwaves, they say that for a reason. Anyway, moving on. Mesmeric Revelation. It's about hypnotism. Do not consent to receive any of this into your life, right? We are reading a story. Any similarities between this story and real characters is just a coincidence. I'm reading it to you, not so you can welcome this into your life or not to indoctrinate you, because I have a couple other books here and I want to share them with you while I'm doing this live, because it's easier this way. I have this one too that I read on the first channel. I didn't read the whole thing. I read it like a few pages. But with a mass worldwide initiation they tried to do, or pretty much did do in 2019, there's a lot in here you should know. And so I have another book there too. So I just wanted to show you a couple of things that we can get into on the channel if you like. So here we go. You don't accept or receive any of this into your life, but this will let you have a better awareness of these things, because they do exist and they do happen, and sometimes on a massive scale. I was looking at FOIA papers recently, just yesterday, Freedom of Information Act papers that have already been released, and I was looking at CIA documentation on GATE and Gateway and the Gateway process and the GATE program. Those are a few different things, and so you have to be very specific. And I was looking at some of that and just, it blows my mind how they gaslight the public and call you crazy if you talk about these things on a public forum, or you try to bring awareness like to, hey, this could be happening to you. When it is, they know it's real. They do studies on it all the time. So I think it's worth noting that they think you're stupid and they want you to be dumb, blind, and stupid, and deaf, blind, and speechless, right? See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, so that your free will can be hijacked. So this is about hypnotism, but the word mesmerize is used instead. By Edgar Allan Poe. Whatever doubt may still envelop the rationale of mesmerism, its startling facts are now almost universally admitted. And back then, they were all into spiritualism. And that was its own thing. You didn't just say, I'm spiritual. Spiritualism was Ouija boards and all these different rapping and knockings and all these different things. Kind of how people go out in the woods now and knock trees, that type of thing. Okay. Of these latter, those who doubt are your mere doubters by profession, an unprofitable and disreputable tribe. Disreputable tribe. He's saying that, just like I just said about gaslighters, he's saying there are people who profit off lying to you that this stuff does not exist, when in fact they know it does because they do studies on it. All right. There can be no more absolute waste of time than the attempt to prove at the present day that man, by mere exercise of will, can so impress his fellow citizen as to cast him into an abnormal condition of which the phenomena resemble very closely those of death. Now this is where we get into the mesmerism. I talked about a movie with Christina Ricci recently, where she wasn't actually dead, but he had her believing she was. or at least resemble them more nearly than they do the phenomena of any other normal condition within our cognizance, that while in this state, the person so impressed employs only with effort and then feebly the external organs of sense, yet perceives with keenly refined perception and through channels supposed unknown matters beyond the scope of the physical organs. Hold right there. He is saying that while you're under hypnosis or while you're being mesmerized, that your body feels no pain. That your body is almost not there, that they remove your physical senses from you to the point where you almost appear as if you're dead. However, your mind can reach out further than in its conscious state. And this is why they're testing hypnosis, is because your physical body can go through and endure any pain. They will poke you with needles, whatever. But your consciousness expands when you are in this state, and you can be used as a tool or a weapon. I haven't even watched movie reviews of Weapon yet, but I'm pretty sure that's how they do it, is weaponizing people through hypnosis and mesmerism. Okay, so moving on. That's what he's saying there. That moreover his intellectual faculties are wonderfully exalted and invigorated, that his sympathies with the person so impressing him are profound, and finally, that his susceptibility to the impression increases with its frequency, while in the same proportion the peculiar phenomena elicited are more extended and more pronounced, meaning your gifts, right? Like your telepathy maybe, or your deja vu, your precognition. All of these things are enhanced when your consciousness is asleep. And this is unfortunate. People want to take advantage of that. Companies, corporations want to take advantage of that. They want you to fall asleep to ASMR videos, so that certain things will be implanted in your mind via different things. So this is how they get you to stop smoking and stop eating, overeating while you're under hypnosis. But what else are they doing while you're under? That should be something that you're concerned about, that you're vigilant about. It is your own free will. So moving on. I say that these, which are the laws of mesmerism, hypnosis, in its general features, it would be supererogation to demonstrate, nor shall I inflict upon my readers so needless a demonstration. Today my purpose at present is a very different one indeed. I am impelled, even in the teeth of a world of prejudice, to detail without comment the very remarkable substance of a colloquy occurring between a sleepwalker and myself. So he wants to tell you a story about a sleepwalker and himself, an incident that occurred. Even though that we're all prejudiced, the audience, meaning you guys watching, even though you don't believe in this stuff, even though you're prejudiced against it, I still feel compelled to tell you about it. Kind of like my channel, how my channel is. That's a very wise comment, his girl. I like that. Jen, you have an audience through the people who follow what I do online. Your broadcasts are doubly interesting. I'm excellent. Yeah. I think that happened to me too, and it hijacks your free will. The spouse admitted to doing that, to hypnotizing me. And I believe that certain things went on for years while I slept. This is why I don't share a room with anybody. I just won't do that. It is an avenue for transhumanist manipulation. Yeah, and that word as well is alchemical. These are all alchemical processes, his girl. Good comments, good comments. Okay, so let me move on. So he's going to tell you a story about an incident between a sleepwalker and himself. Even though he knows you're not going to believe him, he feels like he needs to make you aware. I had been long in the habit of mesmerizing, hypnotizing the person in question, Mr. Van Kirk, and the usual astute or acute susceptibility and exaltation of the mesmeric perception had supervened. For many months he had been laboring under confirmed phthisis, and that's the same word they use for that fish. That's weird. Very close to that word. The more distressing effects of which had been relieved by my manipulations, and on the night of Wednesday, the 15th instant, I was summoned to his bedside. Oh my gosh, today is Wednesday. That's funny. The invalid was suffering with acute pain in the region of the heart and breathed with great difficulty, having all the ordinary symptoms of asthma. In spasms such as these, he had usually found relief from the application of mustard to the nervous centers, but tonight this had been attempted in vain, meaning it didn't work. That's why he was called. He's going to hypnotize him out of this asthmatic attack. All right. As I entered his room, he greeted me with a cheerful smile, and although evidently in much bodily pain, appeared to be mentally quite at ease. I sent for you tonight, he said, not so much to administer to my bodily ailment as to satisfy me concerning certain physical impressions which of late have occasioned me much anxiety and surprise. So that's not actually why he called him there. He wants to talk to him about something else that gives him great anxiety. Moving on. Talk to you how skeptical I have hitherto been on the topic of the soul's immortality. I cannot deny that there has always existed, as if in that very soul which I have been denying, a vague half sentiment of its own existence, meaning he was lying to himself. But this half sentiment at no time amounted to conviction. With it, my reason had nothing to do. All attempts at logical inquiry resulted indeed in leaving me more skeptical than before. I had been advised to study Cousin. I studied him in his own works, as well as in those of his European and American echoes. The Charles Elwood of Bronson, for example, was placed in my hands. I read it with profound attention. Throughout, I found it logical, but the portions which were not merely logical were unhappily the initial arguments of the disbelieving hero of the book. So he's on this quest for the soul's immortality. In his summing up, it seemed evident to me that the reasoner had not even succeeded in convincing himself. He is looking for proof of the soul. His end had plainly forgotten his beginning, like the government of Trinculo. In short, I was not long in perceiving that if man is to be intellectually convinced of his own immortality, he will never be so convinced by the mere abstractions which have been so long the fashion of the moralists of England, of France, and of Germany. He's saying that they need actual proof, evidence that a soul exists, and that's what they're looking for in the through the course of mesmerism or hypnotism. Abstractions may amuse and exercise, but take no hold on the mind. Here upon earth, at least, philosophy, I am persuaded, will always in vain call upon us to look upon qualities as things. The will may assent, the soul, the intellect, never. I repeat then that I only half felt and never intellectually believed. But latterly, there has been a certain deepening of the feeling until it has come so nearly to resemble the acquiescence of reason that I find it difficult to distinguish between the two. I am enabled, too, plainly to trace this effect to the mesmeric influence. He's saying it must be the hypnosis, it must be these sessions that they're having to stop his asthmatic attacks that are instigating him to seek his soul. Okay? He is looking for he feels like the state of being hypnotized is now making him question deeper spiritual things about the soul and the soul's immortality. I cannot better explain my meaning than by the hypothesis that the hypnosis exaltation enables me to perceive a train of ratiocination ratiocination, which in my abnormal existence convinces, but which in full accordance with the mesmeric phenomena does not extend except through its effect into my normal condition. In sleep waking, the reasoning and its conclusion, the cause and its effect, are present together. So I think what he's trying to do here, and I've read this before, but I want to go along with you guys, the audience. I think what he's leading up to is he's wanting to ask him to use hypnosis to prove that there's a soul or to talk to his own soul. This is where it gets pretty cool. Well, interesting at least. So here we go. In sleep waking, the reasoning and its conclusion, the cause and its effect are present together at the same time. In my natural state, meaning when he's conscious, the cause vanishing, the effect only, and perhaps only partially remains. He's saying we're basically spiritually asleep while we're conscious, and while we're asleep, we're spiritually awake, which is a conundrum and a paradox that seems to be true in real life, at least at times. His girl says, once while I was sleeping, I awoke and was aware that I was not in my body but floating above my bed. A note of it, but kind of blew it off as a dream. I've woke up on my ceiling before, and like feeling trapped almost. It's a strange thing. And that's common, you know what I mean? When more than one person has like a dream or an experience or an encounter, especially with the subconscious mind, we need to start listening. 10 people or 10,000 people across maybe America aren't mentally ill because they're having the same vision, right? Maybe their subconscious is trying to tell them something. Okay, so here we go. Moving on. These considerations had led me to think that some good results might ensue from a series of well-directed questions propounded to me while I was mesmerized. See, I was right. He's leading up to asking him to hypnotize him, but not for medical reasons, for his own, ends. Right. And these times, seeing some of the things we've seen, learning some of the things we are learning, and I'm not even talking about orbs in the sky. My ring light quit. It always quits. Okay, moving on. So he's trying to talk this doctor that he called to his house for a house call, saying it was an emergency, right? And he's obviously in pain. He's having an asthmatic attack, but that's not what he called him for. Not the usual sessions. He says, I want you to put me under, and I want to ask my soul. So I want you to interrogate my soul, basically, is what he's saying. Which he has to have a lot of trust for this person, right? To tinker around in your mind. You better trust. You better know that person's agenda and motives, and understand that, they don't want to do you harm, hopefully. Or if they do, you need to avoid that person like the plague anyway. All right, moving on. You have often observed the profound self-cognizance, meaning self-awareness, evidenced by the sleepwaker in the extensive knowledge he displays upon all points relating to the hypnotic condition itself. And from this self-cognizance, self-awareness, may be deduced hints for the proper conduct of a catechism, of a questioning of the soul. I consented, of course, to make this experiment. This guy consented, not us, this guy. But that's key here, and this is why we talk about hypnosis too. Not just because it's all over the FOIA documents that are being requested. It's all over the GATE program, the Gateway program, MK Ultra. It all leans on or is built on hypnosis, mesmerism. And so that's why we talk about this, because we can pull out bits of truth from stories. And when I say they're alchemical, that's what I mean. And then on a deeper sense, looking at some of the events that have taken place since 2019 and what happened in Wuhan being in Nadine Kuhn's story and all the Simpsons predictions. So moving on. He's telling him, I consented when you did this. A few passes threw Mr. Van Kirk into the mesmeric sleep. So he's consented now, he's got him under. Now he wants him to interrogate his soul. His breathing became immediately more easy, and he seemed to suffer no physical uneasiness. The following conversation then ensued. So I'm going to read to you the conversation that he's having with this guy while he's under hypnosis. So it says Van Kirk, he's the one that's being hypnotized. In the dialogue representing the patient and P, myself. So he asks him, "Are you asleep?" V says, "Yes, no, I would rather sleep more soundly." So he asks him, after a few more questions, "Do you sleep now?" "Yes." So now he knows he's fully under. So he says, "How do you think your present illness will result?" So he's going to start questioning him while he's under hypnosis and lead to deeper questions. Like I said, interrogating his soul about his immortality. After a long hesitation and speaking as if with effort, he says, "I must die," the guy in this book. So the doctor says, "Does the idea of death afflict you?" V says, "No, no." The doctor says, "Are you pleased with the prospect?" V says, "If I were awake, I should like to die, but now it is no matter. The mesmeric condition is so near death as to content me." So the doctor says, "I wish you would explain yourself, Mr. Van Kirk." So the hypnotized Mr. Van Kirk says, "I'm willing to do so, but it requires more effort than I feel able to make. You do not question me properly." Oh. So the doctor says, "What then shall I ask?" V says, "You must begin at the beginning." The doctor says, "The beginning? But where is the beginning?" V says, "You know that the beginning is God," and that's in capital letters. So he's telling him while he's under that the beginning of what you really want to ask and where you should really start with this, if you want to talk to my soul, is you should start with the questions about God. So in parentheses it says, "This was said in a low, fluctuating tone and with every sign of the most profound veneration," meaning reverence. So the doctor says, "What then is God?" V says, hesitating for a few minutes, "I cannot tell." So the doctor asks him, "Is not God spirit?" V says, "While I was awake, I knew what you meant by spirit, but now it seems only a word. Such, for instance, as truth, beauty, equality, I mean." So he's having a hard time grasping the word spirit while he is, in fact, not experiencing his body. He is all spirit. So because we can't see ourselves, we can't get outside of ourselves usually and look at ourselves. He is in almost like those Russian dolls where you have one inside another. The soul is the innermost part of that. And so since he's speaking to the soul right now, he's having a hard time telling him what that word means, what spirit is. All right. Is not God immaterial? So V, the hypnotized guy, says, "There is no immateriality. It is a mere word. That which is not matter is not at all, unless qualities are things." So the doctor says, "Is God then material?" "No." And the doctor has in parentheses, "This reply startled me very much." So the doctor asked him, "What then is God?" So the hypnotized man, after a long pause, he mutteringly said, "I see, but it is a thing difficult to tell." And then there was another long pause. "He is not spirit, for he exists, nor is God matter, as you understand it. But there are gradations of matter of which man knows nothing, the grosser impelling the finer pervading the grosser." So let's stop there a second. He is saying, and I've tried to talk about this on the channel, and I've tried to explain this concept as well. The matter that we touch and feel, how people say it's not real, and how the material is like false or an illusion or wicked, to have that uh, polarizing of a view of reality is only limiting your own experience and your own vision of what this place is, what you are, what you can do, cause and effect of everything. It changes everything. Um, so he's trying to tell him that just because you can't see spirit doesn't mean that it doesn't have matter. Just because that spirit that you cannot see can walk through that wall doesn't mean it's not made of matter. It's just not as thick as, or it's not on the same frequency as us. That's all. Spirit is just as real and tangible as we are, but it's on a different frequency than the flesh. And that's our conundrum, that's our inner paradox, because that's how and why we fight with ourselves as human, conscious, sentient, flesh made, spirit made beings. And we always have that inner struggle. Okay, so he's explaining to him, this hypnotized man, he is answering the question of what God is. The atmosphere, for example, impels the electric principle, while the electric principle permeates the atmosphere. These gradations of matter increase in rarity or fineness until we arrive at a matter that is unparticled, meaning matter. Spirit is made of matter, but it's so fine, like the finest grain of sand. Now grind that down some more. It's so fine that in our state, in the state that our matter is at, we can't perceive it. But it is real. It is tangible. And thus is all things within itself. This matter is God. That thing that makes up everything. That is what God is. Right? Okay. That matter is God. When men attempt to embody in the word thought, is this matter in motion? So the hypnotist, the doctor on this house call says, the metaphysicians maintain that all action is reducible to motion and thinking and thought, and that the latter is the origin of the former. Like that cycle, right? Like the Fibonacci, like the eternity symbol, the figure 8. Uh, okay, so the hypnotized guy answers, yes, and I now see the confusion of the idea. Motion is the action of mind, not of thinking. There we go. The unparticled matter, or God, in quiescence is, as nearly as we can conceive it, what men call mind, and the power of self movement equivalent in effect to human volition is, in the unparticled matter, the result of its unity and omniprevalence. How I know not, and now clearly see that I shall, never know. But the unparticled matter set in motion by a law or quality existing within itself is thinking. So the hypnotist says, can you give me no more precise idea of what you term the unparticled matter? He's saying, what do you mean by this unparticled matter is spirit? What does that mean? So he's, teach us like we're 5. So the hypnotized man, again, totally asleep. You can do whatever you want to his body. He won't feel it. He's not consciously aware of it. But his mind is accessing parts of the spirit realm that he's not been able to access when he's conscious. So the hypnotized man answers, unparticled matter is the matters of which man is cognizant, of which he is aware, escape the senses in this gradation, in this scale, like frequency. We have, for example, a metal, a piece of wood, a drop of water, the atmosphere, a gas, caloric, electricity, the luminiferous, ether. Now we call all these things matter and embrace all matter in one general definition. But in spite of this, there can be no two ideas more essentially distinct than that which we attach to a metal and that which we attach to the luminescent ether. So he's telling you right there the fact that metal, wood, all of these things that are made of matter, which is one thing, yeah, they all look different, feel different, sound different, vibrate on a different frequency. Yes, they're all made of matter, but aren't they all different? And this is what he's trying to explain about spirit, about unparticled matter, about spirit. When we reach the latter, the ether, we feel an almost irresistible inclination to class it with spirit or nihility, like the lack of matter completely. He's saying that's not true. The only consideration which restrains us is our conception, our idea of its atomic constitution. And here, even we have to seek aid from our notion of an atom as something possessing an infinite minuteness, solidity, palpability, weight. Destroy the idea of the atomic constitution, and we should no longer be able to regard the ether as an entity, or at least as matter. For want of a better word, we might term it spirit. Take now a step beyond the luminescent ether. Conceive a matter as much more rare than the ether, as this ether is more rare than the metal, and we arrive at once, in spite of all the school dogmas, at a unique mass, an unparticled matter. He's saying the center of everything, take this, break it down as much as you can. Take this, break it down as much as you can. It's still not enough. But just because we break it down into almost this invisible matter, this unparticled matter, this spirit, doesn't mean that it totally lacks tangibility. He's saying that's a nihilistic thought to have, and that it's not true. It is clear, however, that it is fully as matter before. The truth is, it is impossible to conceive spirit, since it is impossible to imagine what is not. When we flatter ourselves that we have formed its conception, we have merely deceived our understanding by the consideration of infinitely rarefied matter. So the doctor says, there seems to me an insurmountable objection to the idea of absolute coalescence, and that is the very slight resistance experienced by the heavenly bodies in their revolutions through space, a resistance now ascertained. It is true to exist in some degree, but which is nevertheless so slight as to have been quite overlooked by the sagacity even of Newton. We know that the resistance of bodies is chiefly in proportion to their density. So he's talking physics with him now. He's trying to get this hypnotized man to explain spirit to him better, and he's basically arguing with him about, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by the mostly refined, particle of matter? Absolute coalescence is absolute density. Where there are no inner spaces, there can be no yielding. An ether, absolutely dense, would put an infinitely more effectual stop to the progress of a star than would an ether of adamant or of iron. Hold, please, while I get a drink. Readings like this are not for everybody because they use quite an eloquent and articulate vocabulary, and that's why I explain some of these things. But these readings aren't for everybody, and I understand that. You have to want to deepen your intellectual abilities and your critical thinking abilities and your vocabulary to read books like this and to listen to them. So I understand that not a lot of people will want to be here and hear some of this, but we can apply it to today, which is why I'm kind of translating to a easier to access language for us today, more current vocabulary, because we can take something away from this. So that's kind of why I'm stopping and changing the language to something that people will understand of our current times and our current, verbiage that we use. All right. So the hypnotized man is now arguing back with him about where his error is in his thinking, where basically even Newton, he's saying, he's asking him, you're saying even Newton got this wrong? And so he's arguing with him. And again, they're seeking God. And we get back to God and the soul on the next page. So he says, your objection, and this is the hypnotized man again, when he is hypnotized, he is able to access more parts of his brain than most people. Your objection is answered with ease, which is nearly in the ratio of its apparent unanswerability. As regards the progress of the star, it can make no difference whether the star passes through the ether or the ether through it. There is no astronomical error more accountable than that which reconciles the known retardation of the comets with the idea of their passage through an ether. For, however rare this ether be supposed, it would put a stop to all sidereal revolution in a very far briefer period than has been admitted by those astronomers who have endeavored to slur over a point which they found it impossible to comprehend. He's saying that it's too, you can't understand it unless you are there, unless you are in the ether. You cannot describe the ether, and even then it's indescribable. The retardation actually experienced is, on the other hand, retardation means to stop or slow down. Like, why are you slowing down when you hit the ether? Why do we still slow down? Again, they're talking physics here, and it's not for everybody, but we're almost done with this part. The retardation actually experienced is, on the other hand, about that which might be expected from the friction of the ether in the instantaneous passage through the orb. In the one case, the slowing force is momentary and complete within itself. In the other, it is endlessly accumulative. So the doctor says, the one who has done the hypnotizing, but in all this, in the identification of mere matter with God, is there nothing of irreverence? And he makes a note here. I was forced to repeat this question before the sleepwaker fully comprehended my meaning. So he says again, but in all this, in the identification of mere matter with God, is there nothing of irreverence? And the sleeping, hypnotized man answers, can you say why matter should be less reverenced than mind? But you forget that the matter of which I speak is, in all respects, the very quote unquote mind or spirit of the schools, so far as regards its high capacities, and is moreover the matter of these schools at the same time. So he is saying, while God's essence flows through all things, it is what gives us our animus. It gives us our life. That's what we all have in common. That's the thread that runs through all of us, is this force of God. And it does have, it is tangible, it does have, but it is so minute that while we are in the flesh, we can't conceive of it. And we can't even understand it, let alone describe it with words. And that's what he's explaining here. And so the sleeping man, the hypnotized man, says that God is everything and everything is God at the same time. So God, with all the powers attributed to spirit, is but the perfection of matter. That's how the sleeping, hypnotized man answers him. So the doctor says then, you assert then that the unparticled matter in motion is thought? And the sleeping man answers, in general, this motion is the universal thought of the universal mind. This thought creates. All created things are but the thoughts of God. So the doctor says, you say in general. Yes, the universal mind is God. For new individualities, matter is necessary. So for new souls, matter is necessary. But you now speak of mind and matter as do the metaphysicians, says the doctor. And he answers, yes, to avoid confusion. When I say mind, I mean the unparticled or ultimate matter. By matter, I intend all else, everything else. So the doctor says then, you were saying that for new individualities, matter is necessary. Great light. And the hypnotized man answers, yes, for mind existing unincorporate is merely God. To create individual thinking beings, it was necessary to incarnate portions of the divine mind. So he's saying everyone in the flesh is a part of the mind of God. Or is it is a thought of the mind of God. And mind is the essence, basically, sort of, if I'm following correctly there too. Again, this reading is not for everyone, but it is spooky month, and so I wanted to delve into Edgar Allan Poe in a way that would be relevant to stuff we're going to be looking into in the next series of videos, because I have some FOIA documents that I brought up about hypnotism. And that's the thing. If our government is gaslighting everybody and saying these things aren't real, they don't happen, they don't exist, and they're just showing you hypnotism as a fun party trick, but they have FOIA papers on it, it's something you should pay attention to. And so I thought this story, in honor of it being Spooky Month by Edgar Allan Poe, would not only be relevant in that way, but it's relevant for the topic at hand. So sorry if the language is a little older, that's why I translate a bit. So he says, the sleeping man says, yes, the universal mind is God. For new individuals, matter is necessary. And then the doctor says, but you now speak of mind and matter as do metaphysicians. And the hypnotized man says, yes, to avoid confusion. When I say mind, I mean the unparticled or ultimate matter. By matter, I intend all else. The hypnotist says, you were saying that for new individualities, matter is necessary. The sleeping man says, yes, for mind existing unincorporate is merely God. To create individual thinking beings, it was necessary to incarnate portions of the divine mind. Thus, man is individualized. Divested of corporate investiture, he were God. He is God. He's a part of God. Now, the particular motion of the incarnated portions of the unparticled matter is the thought of man, as the motion of the whole is that of God. So the hypnotist says, you say that divested of the body, man will be God. And V answers after much hesitation, I could not have said this. It is an absurdity. Uh-oh. So now maybe he tapped into a part of his subconscious so deep that he wasn't supposed to go there. Just like that movie we were talking about, Encounters of the Fourth Kind, or whatever it's called, where Liv Tyler's in that one with all the hypnotism and the alien stuff. I'm telling you, it's a big part of the occult, the hypnotism, and that's why we're talking about it. And at the end of this video, I'll show you another book that we'll dip into a little bit regarding the occult in America and the occult origins of America. So moving on, and again, this used to be very open. People, the spirituality movement went into politics. Like, that's where politics started, was with this stuff. That's where America started, was with this type of thing. And they say it was religious freedom from persecution. And, you know, they use terms like satanic panic to make certain people look insane, like these things don't exist. But again, if they have FOIA papers on it, you got to ask yourself, you got to start listening to your own mind and not celebrity or, you know, popularity. Moving on. After much hesitation, he says, I could not have said this, man being God, you know, when he's divested of the flesh. It's an absurdity. And then the physician says, you did say that. Quote unquote, divested of corporate investiture, meaning of the carnal. When you get rid of the flesh, man is God in disguise. Like, everyone is God. That's what this hypnotized guy is saying. And so he goes on to say, this is very true. Man thus divested would be God, would be unindividualized, but he can never be thus divested, at least never will be. Else we might imagine an action of God returning upon itself, a purposeless and futile action. Man is a creature. Creatures are thoughts of God. It is the nature of thought to be irrevocable. So right there, he's saying, this hypnotized man answering these questions because this part of his subconscious has been accessed. He's saying he would be God, but that can never happen, because then everyone would want to go back together, which some people here are now doing. Like, let's go backwards. Let's all go back to, like, the source as like some amalgamation. I don't want to be primordial soup, and I don't want to. I think we were made as individuals, and we're supposed to spiritually evolve and move forward in. And I don't mean progressive there. I mean move forward in our treatment of each other, in our thought process, in what we are willing to, what we're able to accomplish when we put our mind, especially as a group, set to good, goals and good ends and good means. We can accomplish a lot that way. Moving on. So he's arguing, it's almost like he's arguing with himself right now. So the doctor says, the hypnotist says, I do not understand. You say that man will never put off the body. I say that he will never be bodiless, the hypnotized man answered. So the hypnotist says, explain. There are two bodies, the rudimental and the complete, corresponding with two conditions of the worm and the butterfly. What we call, quote unquote, death is but the painful metamorphosis. Death is a doorway. Death is a transitional state. It's like a place, not a, you don't have to dwell there forever. You don't have to live there. That's why I find it funny that we call like all our countries and stuff are made up of little states. Well, if they're states of being, let's give them better names, right? So that we can all, words have power. That's what this story is about how words have power, and about the quest for the immortal soul and the unconscious mind, and how much we're able to access when we let go of these preconceived notions that we have while we're awake. Bills, work, jobs, politics, that type of stuff. When you can just be your spiritual self, your individual self, you can access a whole different arena of capabilities in your mind. But then thoughts become words, and words become actions, and actions, thoughts and actions create reality, is basically what he's saying here. So he's saying what we call death is but the painful metamorphosis from the butterfly, or from the worm to the butterfly. Our present incarnation is progressive, preparatory, temporary. Our future is perfected, ultimate, immortal. The ultimate life is the full design. So he's saying the ultimate goal of life is to reach that ultimate purpose, right? And we're always going to be progressing towards that, moving forward in that way, or we're supposed to be. Okay, and so the doctor says, of the worm's metamorphosis, we are palpably cognizant. He's saying we're aware of the worm's metamorphosis. And so the hypnotized man answers, we certainly, but not the worm. The matter of which our rudimental body is composed, meaning this, the flesh, is within the ken, the know of the organs of that body. Or more distinctly, our rudimental organs are adapted to the matter of which is formed the rudimental body, but not to that of which the ultimate is composed. He's saying we're aware of our bodies now. We're aware of like what is there and the ultimate of our physical selves. We're not aware of this other body, right? And this could even make a case for that biofield territory, for that whole teaching, I guess, that whole body part, that whole organ. Okay, so the matter of which our rudimental body is composed is within the knowledge of the organs of that body, saying that we're aware of it. The ultimate body, which we're headed to, thus escapes our knowledge, and we perceive only the shell which falls in decaying from the inner form, not that inner form itself, but this inner form, as well as the shell, is appreciable by those who have already acquired the ultimate life. Meaning, when we move from this phase to the next, through death, which is just a transition, just a metamorphosis, and I've talked about this in my personal Mandela videos, Mandela meaning people rising from the dead and seeing them like Mandela did. I've talked about this same thing. Hold on. So he's saying that those on that side of the veil are just as real and just as palpable and tangible as we are over here. We just can't see each other. We can't see them, so we can't perceive of the ultimate goal of our physical body. We can't even envision it. We can't even have the idea of it, right? That's what he's saying there. He's saying, but once you get there, then you can see others and yourself, and then you can know yourself like you do here. I have a head, I have arms, I have eyes, ears, nose. He's saying you can sense yourself and you can sense others because you are of them, right? We're on the same frequency as flesh-made humans. But when we move through the metamorphosis of death, the doorway of death, we ascend to this other, basically another dimension, that people are vibrating on a different frequency and we just can't see each other. That's all. And that's where my most recent theory of, I wonder if demons can't see us, but they can hear us. And this is why the Hopi had that tradition of not speaking their plans aloud, because they didn't want them foiling their plans. All right, so moving on. So the doctor says, you've often said that the hypnotic state very nearly resembles death. How is this? And this is where we get into the spooky aspect that's just like that Christina Ricci movie I was talking about. The one they said was filmed in New York, but I got proof it was Ohio because I know that building and the car had an Ohio license plate. So again, this all falls under HighStrangeness as well as the spooky month. So the doctor is asking this hypnotized man then, why do you compare the state of being hypnotized as the same as death? And he says, when I say it resembles death, I mean that it resembles the ultimate life. For when I am in trance, the senses of my rudimental life are in my absence, and I perceive external things directly, without organs, through a medium which I shall employ in the ultimate unorganized life. And the doctor says, unorganized? And the hypnotized man says, yes. Organs are contrivances by which the individual is brought into sensible relation with particular classes and forms of matter, to the exclusion of other classes and forms. So here again, he's repeating, when I go to that side, I will be made of something different, a different thing, right? So that's basically what he's saying. These organs aren't like those ones, and those ones aren't like these ones. The organs of man are adapted to his rudimental condition, meaning we are in the flesh now because we are in this material frequency. When we go to the next frequency, which is through the transitional state of death, or the metamorphic state of death, we will vibrate at a different frequency. And so those people are still very much alive, they're not on this side of life, right? They're just on different dimensions, different dimensional fields. Maybe that's a better way to say it. I always compare it to a deck of cards, but like a slinky, like a spiral, and that you can, access certain points of time or different dimensions, they're right on top of each other. You just can't see them or perceive them. Somebody else could be living here in an abode, a dwelling place that looks nothing like this, in this same, if you were to map it out, in this same general area. But I'm not seeing them, I'm not perceiving them, and they're not perceiving me because we're in different states of awareness. As this hypnotized man says, the organs of man are adapted to his condition, and to that only. His ultimate condition, meaning your ascended state, being unorganized, is of unlimited comprehension in all points but one, the nature of the volition of God. That is to say, the motion of the unparticled matter. You will have a distinct idea of the ultimate body by conceiving it to be entire brain. This it is not, but a conception of this nature will bring you near a comprehension of what it is. A luminous body, meaning a light body, imparts vibration to the luminescent ether. The vibrations generate similar ones within the retina. These again communicate similar ones to the optic nerve, meaning we see each other, we hear each other, we feel each other because we are vibrating at the same speed on the same frequency. Once we get out of here, once we go through that doorway of death, he's saying you can't, he's still asking him to explain, and he's basically telling him it's indescribable your organs over here, your body over here. It's a lighter body, right? You actually ascend. It's not as heavy. The mass is different. He's saying, I can't even explain to you the differences, right? And that's what he's trying to say. The motion of this ladder is thought, of which perception is the finest undulation. This is the mode by which the mind of the rudimental life communicates with the external world. He's saying your eyes there. What you see, what you perceive because of what you're made of as well. Right? Like, if you go hiking, are you quicker to notice another hiker or an animal? Usually you're quicker to notice another hiker. Why? Because it's a person like you. Like seeks out like. You'll naturally notice, unless the animal's being aggressive, right? Because the behavior is different, right? And so he's saying on a different frequency, your atoms, or which you conceive of as atoms, that's not what they are here, but basically what you conceive of as atoms, they all bounce around at a different vibration and different scale than they do where you're at in the entirely physical realm. Okay. In the ultimate unorganized life, the external world reaches the whole body, which is of a substance having affinity to brain, as I have said, with no other intervention than that of an infinitely rarer ether than even the luminiferous. And to this ether, in unison with it, the whole body vibrates, setting in motion the unparticled matter which permeates it. So basically, if you want to look at it in another way too, he's now saying that this is a school and we are learning as we go, and that basically our light bodies, right, are made of something even more rare than the ether, right? And he's saying that once we get to that space, our very thoughts will create reality. This is why we have to be careful, and this is why you don't move on or graduate until you've mastered this one. Until you've mastered this space, you cannot move into the next. That's kind of what he's telling him here, okay? So he's trying to explain to him, you'll be made of different matter. And over there, your very thoughts will create reality, not just words, right? Not just words are alchemical. He's saying your thoughts are too. And this hypnotized man knows more and is more aware of the metaphysical than Newton, is what the hypnotist said a little bit ago. He's saying, how are you seeing all this? How do you know all this? So to rudimental beings, to us, organs are the cages necessary to confine them until fledged. Basically, we're eggs. We're running around right now. We are cocoons. Our flesh is a cocoon, and we will come out of that as beautiful butterflies in the future, or soon, or in the future could be a second, tomorrow, next year, whenever. So the hypnotist, which is a doctor, goes on to say, you speak of rudimental beings. He's talking about us. Are there other rudimental thinking beings than man? So he answers them. The multitudinous conglomeration, I was making up words, of rare matter into nebulae, planets, suns, and other bodies, which are neither nebulae, suns, nor planets, is for the sole purpose of supplying pabulum for the idiosyncrasy of the organs of an infinity of rudimental beings. Okay, that's different. But for the necessity of the rudimental prior to the ultimate life, there would have been no bodies such as these. Each of these is tenanted by a distinct variety of organic rudimental thinking creatures. That's interesting. In all, the organs vary with the features of the place that you're at, your dwelling place. At death or metamorphosis, these creatures, enjoying the ultimate life, immortality, and self-awareness of all secrets, but the one, act all things and pass everywhere by mere accommodation of which we blindly deem space created. But that space itself, that infinity of which the truly substantive vastness swallows up the star shadows, blotting them out as non-entities from the perception of the angels. Interesting. And so the hypnotist goes on to say, you say that, but for the necessary. Let me restart that. The hypnotist answers, you say that, but for the necessity of the rudimental life, there would have been no stars. But why this necessity? So he answers, what's the necessity? What's the reason for this physical life then? And he said, the hypnotized man answers, in the inorganic life, as well as in the inorganic matter generally, there is nothing to impede the action of one simple, unique law, and this is capitalized here, the divine volition, with the view of producing impediment. The organic life and matter, complex, substantial, and law encumbered, were contrived. But again, the doctor's asking him, why need this impediment have been produced? And so the hypnotized man goes on to tell him, the result of law inviolate, the result of law inviolate is perfection, right? Negative happiness. The result of law violate is imperfection, wrong, positive pain. Through the impediments afforded by the number, complexity, and substantiality of the laws of organic life and matter, the violation of law is rendered to a certain extent practicable. Thus pain, which in the inorganic life is impossible, is possible in the organic. So again, he's telling him here the reason for the physical pain, why suffering, the answer for suffering and evil, kind of. He's saying, well, why create the physical anyway? Why did we need these cages of flesh then, if you're calling them that? And he's basically telling him thus far that you're in a type of school, sort of. And that's like Harry Potter. In this school, our words create the reality. In the next one, we have to do better, right? We're not doing well here. In the next, we have to be masters of this before we can move on to the next one, because in the next world, your mere thoughts will be reality. They will set reality in motion. So before you leave here and graduate to the next one, you got to master this one. And so the doctor's kind of arguing with him, well, why these impediments and why do we have to, why this to begin with? And so he's answering him, why this has to be possible, right? If you don't know joy, you won't know suffering. If you don't know suffering, you won't know joy. And that's the reason for the friction, the yin and the yang, the up and the down, the good and the bad, okay? So, and it's a refinement process. And again, to get to that next place needs to be seen as a graduation. We need to be working on things here in how we speak, in our words to each other, about each other, for each other, should be full of blessings and not curses. And right, and just like I said, with the Bible being alchemical, we need to move from being carnal beings who are more concerned with our outer appearance and how, appearances, whatever you want to call that, materialism, to what's motivating us to be that way, the heart, right? And this is where he's getting to the heart of this. So the hypnotist, the doctor, says to him, but to what good end is pain thus rendered possible? And so the hypnotized man says, all things are either good or bad by comparison. A sufficient analysis will show that pleasure in all cases is but the contrast of pain. Positive pleasure is a mere idea. To be happy at any one point, we must have suffered at the same time. So again, this is a school of suffering, kind of. We have to learn how to deal with that, right? And because of that suffering, we will be grateful when we are on the opposite, opposing side of that suffering. We will not have to be told to be grateful or to be happy. We will just be grateful and be joyous, okay? So he says, never to suffer would have been never to have been blessed. Wow, that's deep. But it has been showed that in the inorganic life, pain cannot be thus the necessity for the organic. The pain of the primitive life on earth is the sole basis of the bliss of the ultimate life in heaven. Now, again, this isn't a hypnotized man answering the doctor. So the doctor says, still, there is one of your expressions which I find it impossible to comprehend. That's like the whole story, right? The truly substantive vastness of the infinity. Well, nobody can describe that, but okay. So he's asking him again. So the hypnotized man answers, this probably is because you have no sufficiently generic conception of the term substance itself. So he's saying this is the root of the problem. You're defining that differently. We must not regard it as a quality, but as a sentiment. It is the perception and thinking beings of the adaptation of matter to their organization. There are many things on earth which would be nihility to the inhabitants of Venus. Many things visible and tangible in Venus which would be not be brought to appreciative as existing at all. And again, hold real quick. Again, he's saying there that we vibrate on different frequencies. You can't even sense it or know it. You know, they can. And so he's using inhabitants of Venus as an example. He's saying you can't know or sense it or describe it until you're there. Hold on one second. I'll get right there with that comment because the story's about over right here. Many things visible and tangible in Venus, which we could not be brought to appreciate as existing at all, but to the inorganic beings, to the angels, the whole of the unparticled matter is substance. That is to say, the whole of what we term space is to them the truest substantiality. He's saying we call it space, but to the angels, that's more real than Earth. So he's saying once we're on the other side, that will be more real to us than this side. The stars, meantime, through what we consider their materiality, escaping the angelic sense, just in proportion as the unparticled matter, through what we consider its immateriality, eludes the organic, saying it escapes us because we're in the material right now. We're in the organic. So now we're back to the narrator talking about the hypnotized person. As the sleep-waker pronounced these latter words in a feeble tone, I observed on his countenance a singular expression, which somewhat alarmed me and induced me to awake him at once. No sooner had I done this than, with a bright smile irradiating all his features, he fell back upon his pillow and expired. He died. I noticed that in less than a minute afterwards, his corpse had all the stern rigidity of stone. His brow was of the coldness of ice. Thus, ordinarily, should it have appeared only after long pressure from Azrael's hand, from death. He's saying he should only look like this after being dead for hours and hours. Why is he decaying so quickly? Why is he going through rigor mortis already? Had the sleepwaker indeed, during the latter portion of his discourse, been addressing me from out the reason of the shadows? I wondered this too, because he said there is but one law, and then you have the whole law of one or whatever it is, that group that sprung out of hypnosis. Although Christ did just leave us one law, and that escapes a lot of people. Now, that is the end of that story. However, these characters, just because he died, he comes back up later in this book, and that's why I said this book, that's one of the alchemical aspects of this book. But it also has truth in there. Don't accept or receive it into your reality, but be aware that there are people out there like that, and understand that about the screens. How your conscious being, your conscious awareness can be hijacked from you while you sleep. So be very careful what devices you leave on and what you're listening to as you fall asleep and all these different things. Okay, his girl says, this is a belief that one must be very careful about. It plays into the yin-yang ideology. The reason I do not embrace the knowledge of happiness comes from the knowledge of pain is because the power of good and love come from God, and God exists and existed for Satan, the author of pain and sin and darkness, and separate from him after was created. Thus, good, love, and joy exist without the pain. That's very true, and that is a good summary And those are good bookends for the fall of man, though. We fell, right? And so because of that, we're in a school of learning, basically, to learn how to get back to, where we were. And that all plays into it, right? The good, the bad. It is a binary state that we are in right now. But yes, in the beginning, before we ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and a lot of people miss this too. It's not the knowledge that was the bad thing. It was evil. We now knew the difference between good and evil. We entered a binary state, a lower state, by that disobedience, by not waiting for that tree to be blessed. That's why he didn't want us to eat it. And just like when you see in the cartoon, somebody gets an apple and there's a worm in it. The Essene book refers to Satan as being a parasite. So those things do affect you. It was from Edgar Allen Poe compilation. And that one is called Mesmeric Revelation. Mesmeric. MESMERIC. I think he made that word up. It's basically hypnotic revelation, because that's what it was. It was a revelation while somebody was in a hypnotic state, and I do warn against that extensively. But his girl, that was a great observation, because again, that is all very true. God is all good, and there is no law against love. For example, it doesn't have to be, I give you this, you give me that. There is no, you can give somebody and shower them with as much love. That does not mean that now you have to receive something negative. Jesus tells us that the universe, God is above all these things. But right now we are in a binary state, right? Where we have to kind of get out of certain things. Oh, right, absolutely. She says, true, but Yeshua, Jesus, factor must be given full credit, though we have to take full responsibility for living in the fullness of his banishment of evil. Thank you. Oh, no need to thank me. I hope somebody benefited from it, and I hope you guys liked it. Again, thank you for tolerating everything looking different all the time, me looking different all the time, because I'm on different screens. It is what it is. I want to test my devices. I kind of should. I owe it to myself and to you guys. I give a lot of time trying to find different ways to communicate with whoever happens to come this way. That's why I read different levels of spiritual material, because you never know where somebody's at in their walk. And yes, we are in a binary state, and yes, God needs to always be given credit, right? This is why he sent Jesus on a rescue mission, because we fell into this lower state of good and evil. Whereas when we are in paradise again, when everything is restored, it will just be, it'll truly be all good. You know that saying, when people say it's all good, then it will truly be all good. I gotta take that ring light off. All right, guys, I'm gonna bounce and see how this looks. Hopefully it'll post okay. You guys have a blessed day. Thank you for being here with me. I appreciate all of you. We are gonna go over All Hallows Eve. I do have a part in the book of Adam and Eve that I want to read to you guys. Not the whole thing. I tried to read the whole thing on the other channel, and it just, reading ends up, unless people are actually going to stay for the whole book, it kind of becomes a waste. So I just do parts now, just excerpts. But also this one that I showed a little on the main channel, because of the massive worldwide initiation attempted recently, there's stuff in here that you should know. Not the whole book. Unless you guys want me to read the whole book, that's when I'll read a whole book. And also, oddly enough, this. Look at what's on front. You got the bull. There's a lot of Greek and Roman beliefs in here. And though it may seem like a lower level than we are at, you never know where you'll find information. And there's a lot of names that are used here that, again, we can learn if we apply them to current situations. So let us learn from our past and continue to progress and move forward on this soul journey that we seem to be on. And let's, at least those of us, let's stop trying to go backwards. We're not meant to go back in the same way that we left. Hopefully, anyways, we left in a kind of bad way, and we made the satanic god by default, which he is not, and we've got to reclaim the sovereignty and consent. I'm going to talk about a little more in another video. Probably tomorrow's video will be a lot shorter, but I will talk about consent because of the month that we are in. And for some extreme radical pagans, literal, pagans, druids, they participate in certain sacrificial rites, and it's good for you to understand how your free will and your consent can be hijacked in this time, and to not allow that to happen. Just, I do not consent to any of this coming into my daily life, and you shouldn't either. Just be aware that it's out there. People do these things, and keep your mind safe. Keep God in the temple, your holy temple, right? Keep God in your temple. You guys have a blessed day. We'll talk again soon.